Okay, we are going to jump right into Vav Amud Beis, the bottom of the Amud, with an incident, with a Maisa that happened. We are going to be discussing cases, just to give Agdama, is that there are two people. There's a house that has two floors, floor A and floor B. Now, floor A belongs to Reuven. He paid for it fair and square. Floor B belongs to Shimon. Before we get into the more, we're going to be discussing what happens when the structure of the whole entire building starts going lower and lower. So that's going to be the discussion of today at the beginning of the daf. So let's see the mice. Hanu beitrei dahavu dayari. There was once two brothers. Their father owned a two-story house. So brother one got floor one, brother two got floor two. They're the exact same dimensions. It's the exact same house. Chad have a dayer iloi. One of the brothers lived, we're going to call it floor two. The chad have a dayer tasai. And one lived in the lower apartment. That was the Yerusha. What happened was, after a while, itvar tatai, which means to say, is eventually buildings start to sink to a certain degree. Now it's causing the first floor to go lower. Now he has a door that's 6 feet high, let's say, but now the whole entire structure is going deeper and deeper into the ground. So now in order to get into the house, he has to stoop. He has to lower his head to get into the doorway. However, let's remember, floor two, nothing practically has changed. So what is the halacha? So Amalei Tasoi Lilai, the brother on the bottom tells his brother upstairs, let's demolish this house, let's do a demolition, and rebuild it. So I can, it's hard for me to live in this apartment, I have to stoop in. Amalei Anashapikadarina. It doesn't look like there was a lot of love going on between the two brothers. And he says, I hate to break it to you, I'm perfectly happy. So Amr Lay, the younger brother downstairs, says, Istere Ana, the Avni, you know what? I up to Zainam at Aleph. We flip the daf. Amr Lay, Istere Ana, the Avni. The brother downstairs says, you know what? I'll pay for the demolition. I can't live. Amalei, Leslie, I have nowhere. If you're gonna demolish the house, where I'm gonna live in between. Amalei. So the younger brother tells him, I know I'll rent you a place. Don't worry. Or I'll put you up in a gorgeous, nice Hilton. I'm not interested in moving now. So the brother downstairs says, what do you mean? What's going on? But I can't live. This is not Chris. This is not normal. So the upstairs says, you know what? The upstairs resident, which is his brother, he says, Shov akreisach va'ol, v'shov akreisach ufaik. What's that mean? Shov means bend, akreisach means your belly. I don't care what you have to do. If you need to crawl in, crawl in. None of my business. I'm living there very happy. So what happened was, the two brothers decided to go to Reb Chama. They went to Reb Chama and they said, look what's going on with my older brother. He's not acting nice. Amar Reb Chama bedina kamakev. I hate to break it to you, he tells the younger brother. But you know what? He's right. You have no right to make him get out of his house just because you're inconvenienced. However, Reb Chama said 2 points. One is, Hani mili delaymati kashur limata masar. That means to say, this is all fine as long as the top story doesn't go into 10 tfachim high. So let's make it easy. It was 6 tfachim. 10 tfachim is around 35 and a half inches. So let's make it easier. Yeah, that's the measurement. It's not high at all. 35 and a half, 36. We have Julie telling us. Now, so how do we understand that? Now, the answer is, what changes when it's 10 tfachim to 37 tfachim? Let's be real, they're both very difficult to live in. So why suddenly when it's 10 tfachim, it changes? So the answer is that the whole time, if you think about it, the upper neighbor, the second it goes down even 1 inch, he's theoretically in the space of the bottom neighbor. So why can't I say you're in my airspace? So the halacha is that since we own two structures, you have floor A and floor B, you have no taina that you're in my airspace as long as I have a dwelling downstairs. However, the second that it bounces under 10 tfachim, I don't have an apartment. It's not considered an apartment. So my taina to you is not that I don't have an apartment. My taina to you is you, upstairs neighbor, are in my apartment because your whole floor is going down into my airspace. That is the taina that I have. Now, but if the floor beams of the upper story is under 10 tfachim ready, Matzi Amarle, the downstairs neighbor can tell the upstairs neighbor, underneath 10 tfachim is my rishos, and you have no right to be there, and you have no right to use it, therefore you invaded my property. And not only that, what's going to happen is, if you're smart, you're going to make sure to take the opportunity, take the offer when he agrees to rebuild everything and pay for my hotel stay, because eventually what's going to happen is it's going to go under 10 tfachim, and then he's going to get you back in everything. So a smart fellow should be a nice fellow and say, you know what? Yes, it's hard for you to live. As long as you're willing to pay the expenses, no problem, I'll move out.
If it's the first floor.
If it's the first floor is the one who's suffering, because his structure is going into the ground. You have to remember, those days the structures were not what it was today. We had mud, it came winters, you could have a bad winter, the next thing you know, your property's in there. Okay, another point is, which I'm not sure is so, to me it's a little pshita, is the hani mili deloy hasni gabi adadi, avagabi hasni adadi sasirivani, which means to say is, and we're going to go right into that, into the Gemara, which means to say is, as long as there was no stipulation, there was no tana'im in between them. However, but if they initially stipulated between themselves, then avada they have to pay the fees. So the Gemara is going to jump right into what is this Tanai? How much does it need to go in? We basically made up in the Tanai that if we're going to have an issue that the first property, floor A structure is going into the ground, then we're going to move out. So the question is how much? Well, I could start hiring a professional engineer. You know, today was the environment. They start saying how the earth and the New York City is going down 3 million of an inch. No one really cares. Let's be real, right? That it's going so little. So the point is, how much does it need to go down in order that the Tanai gets into effect that we're going to have to leave, that floor B is going to have to leave his house and move out. V'chi hasnu b'hadadi hadadi. Ad kama. How much does the building settle before he could force his upstairs neighbor to demolish and rebuild? So the Gemara answers, Amur Rabbanon kamei de Rabba. The Rabbanon said in front of Rabba, or some read it as Rava, Mishmei, in the name of Mar Zutra Berei der Rav Nachman, the son of Rav Nachman, that he himself said, Amar Mishmei der Rav Nachman ka'oisa sheshaninu. There's a Mishnah that talks about, we're going to see it in 98, Sadeh Chesam Beis. It's going to talk about measurements, minimum measurements. Now, what is a minimum measurement of a structure? Now, to say it outside, the minimum measurement of a structure, we learn it from the Heichel. We have a story, how high does this room need to be in order to be sustainable, that it's not going to smash. If the width of let's make it in this room per se. This room is 20 feet long or 30 feet long, 12 to 15 feet. Let's make it easier. It's 20 feet wide, 40 feet long. How high does this need to be? The answer is, how do we formulate in a calculator a measurement?
Something to do with the floor.
There's nothing to do. Sure it does. What we're going to do is we're going to take the width, we're going to divide it into 2. You told me the width is 20 feet. What's 20 divided into 2? 10. Write number 10 on a piece of paper. I told you that the length of this room is 40 feet. 40 divided into 2? I put 20. I take the paper, I write 20 plus 10. How tall does the walls then? Maybe Mel, today's days and age, it's a little different. Our structures are much different. But in those days, how tall, how much height did the room need to be? It needed to be half of the width and half of the length. So if it was, pardon?
Depends on the people.
What do you mean the people?
What if I'm a tall person?
No, it has nothing to do with the height. I said in order for the structure to be sustained, in order for the structure to last. If a structure is 300 feet tall, we learned this a few days ago. Would the structure hold up if you only have a width of few tfachim? No. So it's the same thing. What is the measurement of a room in order to, we're trying to figure out a minimum height. You're right, it could be higher, but we're trying to establish a minimum height for all structures. So we learn it from the Heichel. Then what do we learn from the Heichel? This is the minimum height that's normal out there. It has nothing to do with the height of a person. Mel's asking a good point. I'm a very tall person. I'm 7 feet. And I want to build a little booth that's only 2 feet wide and 3 feet, 2 amas wide and 3 amas length. If you make the measurements, the height is not going to equal 7 feet. So Mel's asked, I can't even walk in. How is it considered minimum height? So let's be real. How many people are taller than 35 and a half tfachim? 35 and a half inches, Mel. Most people are higher than 35 and a half inches.
Yeah.
But what do we say is a sukkah kosher if it's 35 and a half inches to 36 inches?
Yeah.
So we're not...
Sit in it.
What? You can sit in it. So Mel's asking a good point that, let's be real, it should really go maybe in the height of a person. Sometimes the minimum is even less. I'm not 100% to answer that question.
You could sit in the sukkah
Right.
very low.
Right, you could sit in a sukkah. So I'm not 100% sure if you could answer if it's a good answer to just say you are right. There are certain dwellings that some people can't walk into. I'm not sure. I'm not sure why the minimum height should be at least, like the way Mel's saying it, should be at least the minimum height of a typical person. 5.5 feet, 6 feet, whatever the minimum height should be. So I'm not sure. I'm going to get back to you, Mel, hopefully tomorrow, a little deeper, about this point. But let's continue.
Someone said the guy can crawl.
Oh, who said?
The more we learned up here.
Right, he can learn in there that he's allowed to crawl into his house. Right, but the question is, why is that the din? Why is that the din? I guess. So Jack's saying a good point. We might be wrong. We have a basic understanding, Mel, that you should be able to stand up in your house. It's not so simple, Mel, that you should be able to stand up in your house, like Jack is saying. Chama told him that he has a right to say crawl into your house as long as you're able to sit in your house like a sukkah. So it sounds like a structure does not need to be the length of a height. It has to only be a length that you're able to even sit in it. Mel, are you fine with that? Okay, let's continue. Amar Lahu Rabbah. Rabbah disputes this version of Nachman's statement. He offers another one. Lav amina lechu. Have I not previously told you? Leitislu bei buki siriki. Empty pitchers. Basically, stuff that are not reasonable. Don't say, but Rav Nachman. Don't blame it on Rav Nachman. He never said that this halacha. Hachi amar Rav Nachman. Ki diary inchi. The upstairs neighbors, as long as what is typical, mamish the way Mel was pushing. Let's be reasonable. Wow. The kama, how much is a reasonable height? Reasonable normal dwelling on Ravuna Beit Yeshua. Ki heichi da'ayli, as long as you can walk in. Isirasa de mechuz of as long as you're carrying a bunch of long reeds and you're able to go in all directions of the reeds. Whatever, I guess you could look at the practical times, the reeds, well, let's say 2 feet, 3 feet, whatever the measurements are. You're able to go in all directions. And I guess you have to assume you're always able to go the vertical direction. However, some Achronim say it's not about so much about vertical completely, but it's about just maneuvering around. So Rav Nachman wants to say, literally the way Mel was pushing his agenda, that no, it has to be reasonable. Okay. The Gemara is going to relate an incident. Ahu Gavra, there was a certain person, the Havibani Ashisi, who was building a wall. Achayre Kavi de Chavri, who was blocking his neighbor's windows from sunlight for getting in. Amarle, the neighbor comes out screaming and says, "Come out for light. You're darkening my windows. I can't see now. I have no sunlight." So the builder offered a solution. He said, Amarle, Sacharna lachacha, no problem. I'll close your windows up with cement, stones, and mortar. It sounds like the wall was much higher, but the windows were more, didn't have to be at that. It didn't have to be in that space. It was no problem really to put the windows higher up. Amarle, I have an issue with that. By you making more windows or destroying or damaging, let's not use the word destroying, you're damaging my wall every time You bang. So Amalei, no problem. Sasarna loch lashisach. Duchte de kavi. No problem. I'll dismantle your wall. I'll slice it. And I'll put a brand new wall already with windows like that. We don't have to destroy the wall.
Today, if somebody blocks somebody from the sun, you could stop them from doing it. Am I right?
I think there is. It's not so simple. It's not so simple. Legally, you have a right to block in America law. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but it's not so simple. I don't think you could.
I had that problem when I sold my house. Some other time when you have
Okay.
time,
Well, you'll tell me the story. Yeah. Amalei sarag melach lashisa ad duchte de kavi. And I'll rebuild it. No problem. I'll slice the thing. I'll rebuild a new wall with windows. Like that, there's not going to be any pounding in the walls. I have a problem with that also. Means to say if the wall on the bottom is going to be old and the top part of the wall is going to be new, like kayama. It's not going to be a very strong wall. Imagine this wall was split into two. You had an old wall that was many years, then you add an attachment of a new wall. It's not going to stay powerful. Amarle. Sasarnalach alar, no problem. I'll destroy the whole northern wall, let's call it. Uvaninala, I'll build you a brand new wall. And I'll put in windows. Amarle, no. Chada shisa chadata. If I have one wall, there's 4 walls of a house. If one of the walls are new, bekule beis atika. It's not gonna, and the rest of the walls are old, like Hayama, it's not gonna endure. It's not good for the structure that one of the walls is newer. Yes.
Right, you're right. Don't do me any favors.
Amarle Leslie Duchta Lamedaba, I have nowhere to live. If I have to, so what did he answer him back? Sorry, I skipped one line. Amarle Sasarna Lach Lekula Besa. I'll raise entire house. I guess this guy was very wealthy, apparently. Money meant nothing to him. I'll build a brand new house with the window somewhere else.
Testing him.
I'm not sure if he was testing him. You'll be surprised today. People have monopoly money. They'll do anything. Amr Leslie Duchta I have nowhere to live. Amr no problem. I'll put you up in a gorgeous hotel. Like Duchta. Amr I don't know. I don't want to move out. I'm happy where I am. Right.
Conrad Hilton was born.
Amr Chama Bedin Kamaakev. He has a right. Like Mel saying, I can do what I don't. I don't want to leave. It's not comfortable for me. So, frak the Gemara. What?
Halfway through, he'll change his mind.
Right, he'll change his mind and he'll end up, yep. Frak the Gemara question. Hainuach. It's the exact same. We just went through a different incident with the 2 neighbors, the 2 brothers, whatever it was, and this scenario with the windows. V'hasulamali. Why do I need to hear this? I got the point. Rav Chama, you got the point. As long as I have it right. Tough nuggets. I don't want you to tell me you'll build me a thing. I don't want anything. I want to stay in peace. For the Gemara, Kamash Malon, the second case where it's talking about the windows, this is a massive chiddush. The Alpha God Deloy Mishtamish. Ella, even though this whole building that we're talking about with the light, Ella Tivna Uvetziva Bama. He's literally using this for a storage house. I'm not sure why he has a real good point about the light. I thought about it yesterday. That if so,
He's got a lot of money.
no, it's not a.
Build a storage house.
No, it's the person that has a lot of money is building near the storage house. He wants him to remove the storage. But what was bothering me when I was looking over this Gemara yesterday is that it's not, if you're not living there, what's your taina with the light? So I'm not sure why he has a good point to say about the light. Mel, do you understand what's bothering me? Like, well, why do you have light? What do you need light for? You're not even living there. So I'm not 100% sure. Maybe, I'm thinking now that what it could do is, if there's no light in the storage, if you ever go into damp storage houses, the bugs come and it eats up all the things. So I think you do need the light in order to, every storage room needs windows in order to have air. So I guess you have to say that. That's, I'm coming all right.
And then on the other hand, he might work there too.
Yeah, but it sounds like the tercha is all you're doing is removing straw. You're not even moving out. Let's be real. The first scenario, is it very hard to move apartments, go to a hotel for 6 months and come back? It's extremely difficult.
Well, if it's a storage.
No, if it's not a storage, I'm talking about even a house.
It's more difficult to move.
No, storage is it's not so complicated. He's willing to pay for workers to go and literally take the things and put it in a different storage building. So he says, I don't want to be busy with it. I have enough in my head. It's a big chiddush. Okay, we're going to relate another incident regarding two brothers. It doesn't either sound like they have too much love. Hanu beitrei achi depalgi ba'adadi adadi. Two brothers, they split up the Yerusha. Now, what the Yerusha was, there was a mansion and a garden. So one of them took the mansion and one of them took the garden. Chad matias belida. One got his mansion as the portion. The chad matzi tarbitza. One received the garden. Now, the light from the garden was going into we're in 7A1. The light of the garden was going into the mansion, right? So Azalahu demati tarbitza, the one who had the garden, wanted to build a wall, which was going to the Kaabani Ashisa Puma that's built, and he was building a wall at the entrance of the mansion, thereby obstructing the sunlight. So his brother who got the mansion said, Amalaikum aftalai. You're ruining, what do you mean? You're taking out all my light. You're darkening my residence. Amalai, his brother answers back, Bididika benina. At full right, you have no chazaka because it was never 3 years. We literally split it up today. So Amr Rav Chana B'Dinka Amalai, he's right, since there was no chazaka, right? He literally just split up the Yerusha. He has the right. So Ravina was questioning Rav Chama. Amalai Ravina Larvashi. Ma'ishna Mahaditanya, we have a brayse that says, Shnei Achim Shachaku. Two brothers that divided an estate. Echad Mahem Natal State Kerem. So one got the vineyard. The Echad Mahem not the Sadalavan, and got the Sadalavan. Now, let's be real. A Sadalavan, I think, if my understanding, was much cheaper than the stay and then the vineyard. But they figured out how they'll get there, how they'll both be happy. The halacha is, we learned this when we learned Mechitzas HaKerem. Next to the vineyard, you need really 4 amas for the cows to go back and forth and spin in order, they need space. So a regular vineyard that has a random neighbor, he's losing 4 amas of his vineyard because he has to cut down the vineyard to put in the cows to go. Basically, you need a pathway. Pathway is space. So the halacha is yesh lo lebala kerem arba amas. You know where he gets the arba amas from? The Sadalavan. He gets to take from the Sadalavan.
Who owns the Sadalavan?
Oh, who owns the Sadalavan? The brother that split up, right? So it used to be, let's clarify, it used to be the fathers. When the father, it was one big field, 50 feet to the left was a vineyard, 50 feet to the right was a Sadalavan, a grain field. A wheat field, right? Now, but if you look at an aerial picture, you'll see in between the two fields, there's 4 amas of a path. Now, the purpose of the 4 amas was for the animals to be able to go back and forth. So the question becomes, now we split the field, you have a pathway. Now the question becomes, who owns that pathway? So the son of Lavan is telling the vineyard, this is mine, therefore you must cut dal amos of your vineyard, tough nuggets. The halacha is, no, the Baal of vineyard could tell him, you have to leave it the way it is, and I'm allowed to use it. Shamanas kein chalku. We could assume that when we saw the whole entire field, that was part of the condition that we split it up. I knew that I'm going to get the vineyard, you're going to get the southern, right? But part of getting the vineyard was obvious. I guess they worked through the numbers. They're 2 equal brothers. I guess there's no bechar. Whether there's bechar is not relevant. And they figured out, the vineyard's worth $1,000. This is worth $1,000.
In other words, they're forced to share.
They're forced to share, correct. They're forced to share. You have no right. So the question becomes, so too over here. Let's be real. You had a mansion. A mansion has light in it. You're going to suddenly come and trick me and put up a wall. It's no different like you telling me the vineyard, you have to cut 4 amas. So Rav Anchi answered, no. Amalei hasam da'alu adadi. There, in that scenario, they assessed their portions. They said, you know what? The vineyard on its whole is worth $1,000. Your sod is also worth $1,000. But if you would make me cut those 4 amas because you want it, then it comes out my vineyard's worth $800 and your sod is worth $1,200. That's not fair. So in order to have a fair assessment, we understand that the Dalat Amas is going to stay the way it is. You think they didn't assess their portions? He knew clearly. We're talking about 2 not smart brothers. High chocolate spilled the high chocolate pizza. Come on. Let's use common sense. You have a beautiful mansion. I have a garden. There's no question about it that the person that has the mansion had to pay the younger brother or the brother the difference in the price. A mansion's worth $1 million. A garden's worth $100,000. So there's no question about it that they figured out a deal that he's going to pay the difference. Therefore, we should assume, right, that part of the agreement was, I knew that I'm paying $1 million for a mansion. Sorry. That I'm paying for a mansion that includes light. Sunlight. Rav Ashi answers yes. They assessed it. However, they only assessed the materials in the mansion itself. Have the essential differences. Okay, this I'm not going to argue so much. That they didn't assess the light so much. That's basically Rav Ashi's answer. However, by the case of the vineyard, we all agree that it's a must. What's the difference between the light of a mansion and the vineyard's case? The vineyard, if you don't do those daled amas, you must cut another 4 amas. What would happen? Let me ask you fellas. What would happen if there was no windows in this room? Would it not be a room? It's a room. It's not as pleasant. There's no question about it, right? There's sunlight coming in, so it's nicer, it's more enjoyable, but it's still considered a room. So therefore, we can say they did not make the assessment. Okay. You good, Ramel?
Yeah, but
Yes, I'm listening.
the vineyard needs room for...
Right, that's exactly what I was saying. I was saying that the vineyard is necessary. Without the Daled Amas, you don't have a proper vineyard. Masha'enkein, the light, the sunlight, is not so necessary. If we don't have windows in these rooms right now, it wouldn't be as pleasant, but it's still called a room. Vineyard is putting a gun to my head and saying I have to cut the 4 amas. That's the issue. Okay, right, that's why Rav Ashi, that was Rav Ashi's answer to them. Okay. So for the Ravina continues and questioning Rav Chaman. He says, "But let the mansion owner tell the person with the garden, Mi'ikara esplita palaktali, you gave me a mansion. Hashta mishavas liadruna. By building me a wall now, you're creating for me a dark room." He's basically trying to say is that I don't have a mansion now. Right? I wanted a mansion with light. That's his biggest complaint. Is right now you're taking the whole mansion and you're making it into a dark room. Amrav Shimi Barashi Shma Ba'ama Palagle Eina Chanami. If you have a mansion, you expect light. However, he was willing to take it even though the light is black, but it's still called a mansion. Because let's be real, if for whatever reason you have a mansion today and the lights are all, for whatever reason there's no room, the windows are black, it's still called a beautiful mansion. Mi loitani, we have a price of this concept. Now, what is a base core offer? Base core offer is enough measurements to make it's enough to make grain. How much? 75 square amas. 30 sa'ah. Sa'ah is 2,500 square amas. It's 30 sa'ah. It's lamed sa'ah. Even though in reality it's only a lesson, which is 50% of it. The halach is it's a good mechira. Because it has the name of a base core. However, the miskari base core, it has to be called out there. People have to call it a base core. We find other concepts like this. Pardis ani meichelach. I'm selling you a pomegranate field. Af b'shein ba, you remind him, even though it doesn't have pomegranate trees, it's still a gear. It's a good sale. Shalei machalay el shma. And who the miskri pardis, people call it the pomegranate field, even though in reality there's no pomegranate trees. Karam, another scenario is I'm selling you a vineyard and even though there's no grapevines, it's still a gear, it's still a good sale shot. Loi machala ella shema. V'hu de miskri karma. We see from here in this whole brisa that as long as it's in the name, people call it the mansion, people call it the vineyard. It's very interesting. Even though in reality, if you pull up, there's no grain. So how do you understand it?
But chances are, before you buy it, you look at it.
That's right.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
That's
That's the whole point. Is that I'm saying you should have been smart. You should have looked at it. Everyone calls it the vineyard, but we know that there's no grain vines anymore.
Call it whatever you want.
No, but it has to be the name out there. Who the mystery, right? Everybody else, the Gemara says. Who the mystery? That's you should underline those two words. But who the mystery means that is what everybody refers to. I come and I say, do you want to buy the white mansion? Let's say there's, the block, down the block, there's like a white mansion. And it's not so whoa. But everyone got the name the White Mansion. The White House.
right.
So that's the name. You should have known better. You should have done your due diligence and pulled down to the yard. That's why, that's why smart people would have a lawyer.
Story in our Dafyomi over here. Somebody bought a house called the Lake House. They signed the deal and everything was over. And at the end he says, by the way, do you want to buy the lake that goes with it? You take a look at the deed. It doesn't include it yet. That's a little extra now. So that's the whole thing over there. Just because they called it the base core, you have to know what it is.
Right.
And that's why you need a good lawyer.
Right. Okay, yep, that's exactly the point. The lake house is the house, even though some people can make a simple mistake and think it's part of the lake. Okay, let's continue.
Pay extra for the lake.
Oh, it's a true incident?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's a true case.
You could have told him it's Meferish Gemara, 7a, Mbaba Basra.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, perfect. So, Frek the Gemara, me dummy. Are you really comparing the case of the Yerusha and the case of the Brisa? I sold you the name and you should have known better, right? I died to the Hachi Palgi. Why was I agreeing to split up the mansion? I'm not stupid. I see the mansion. I see the thing. I put everything. I walk in. I did a walkthrough. I had this beautiful light. It's worth a lot of money. The Hachi Palgi. That's why I split. Now you're going to come and put in the walls. You're going to ruin my whole value of the property. The Derina Bekeheche the Dari Avasan, just like our father lived with beautiful. I didn't think you're going to start playing around and covering it. Therefore, the Gemara wants to say not like Rav Chama. And the Gemara concludes that Amrulei Mayanuka. Let's flip the daf. We're up to Zion Amid Beis now. Amrulei Mayanuka Umar Kashisha. The Raider of Chizda, the sons of Chizda, some say he was called the Yanuka, means either he was the younger one or it means he was really the older one and he was born when his father was young. But they're both sons of Chizda, they both told Rav Ashi. Nahardoi, who's Nahardoi? Nahardoi means the natives from the city of Nahardoi, which was Rav Chama and Shmuel. They were both from Nahardoi. They're the ones who say this halacha that what? The Amar of Nachman, Amar Shmuel. They come from Nahardoi. They say, "Achin shachaku, ein lahen loiderech zelzeh." They do not have the right of way, which means to say is, and they have to pay extra, even though when their father was living, because there was two fields that he used to have with each other. There was one owner. There was paths in between the fields. You have to pay extra. You don't have the right for privacy. This is our sugya. You have no right to put a ladder on the residence. Even though their father had a ladder, you have to pay extra. Do your due diligence. Don't think just because our father had it, right into the contract. You can't use the water channel, even though the father had it. And he told him, make sure that these are the established halachas, because this is the halacha that you don't have what your father had. Rava argues. Rava says, Amar Yeshlan. So we see it's a machlekes from the Nardoi, which was Chama and Shmuel. They both held just because your father had, whether it was a right of way, whether it was ladders, whatever it was. Now that we're splitting it, we look at it as two strangers. It's like the lake house incident. Don't make assumptions. Figure out what you're buying. This is what you get. Okay. Now we're going to go. This was so far. We had three scenarios that they went in front of Chama. Another incident that happened. There was a scenario that happened as follows. Ahush shtara. They asked me the nafik aletava. What happened was Reuven borrowed money to Shimon. Reuven, unfortunately, Reuven lent money. Sorry, Baruch Hashem. Wow, Reuven lent money to Shimon, and Reuven Nebuch was nifter. The Yisraelim come, they see that there's a chayv, they walk over to Shimon, they say, Shimon, you owe my father money. Suddenly Shimon now pulls out a receipt that says he paid. He has witnesses signed in it. So what's wrong with this story? What's wrong with the story is, this is the main point. There are witnesses that right before the father died, he approached Shimon and he said, Shimon, please pay me back. And Shimon started apologizing. He said, I don't have money. Could you give me a few more days? And he died. Then Reuven died. So Shimon at the time didn't pull out suddenly this receipt. So it's very highly suspicious that we have Aiden that say when Reuven was alive, he had no receipt. Suddenly the second he dies, you pull out a receipt. It's highly suspicious. So we're going to be thinking maybe that this receipt is forged. So who started the Yasmin the Nafik Tavra? They come over to the person and say, you owe us the money, and he pulls out a receipt. The Nafik Tavra means a receipt. Amar of Chama, we have an issue. This is how he passed it. Agvuye loy magbinale. You can't collect money because of the promissory note because he has a receipt. However, we don't want to rip up this note, even though he has a receipt. Umikra like Karinim Bey, even though usually Bezin would destroy this, promissory note because he's pulling a receipt. In this scenario, because it's highly suspicious, we're going to leave it the way it is. And Rav Chama explains why not. We're not going to collect the money. The Nafik Tavar because he produced a receipt. Mikra like Karinim Bey, the Chigadli. What are we going to think? What's going to help by keeping it? The Chigadli asked me, when the Yisraelim get older, now they're too young to do investigative reports, to hire investigators. They're weak. They're young kids. Wait till they get older. Maybe they'll, figure out a course of action, hire investigators in order to figure out what really happened. So therefore, we leave it status quo. We leave it the way it is. However, Rav Acha was questioning this, are these the accepted halachas? What is the halacha with all these four halachas that he kept on saying? Dino, yeah, the bottom brother has a point. The top brother I meant, or he doesn't have to give him the windows blocking the mansions over here also. The first three cases of the halachas like Rav Chama, lebar, mitaver, except the scenario, the last case with the receipt. The sadi b'shakri loy mechazakina. By you telling us that we're going to hold on to this note, you're basically saying that these witnesses are liars because he produced a receipt with two witnesses, right? And that
It's
the
two
Torah.
different times. They don't have to be liars.
How no? The receipt says the Reuven paid back Shimon that loan that he borrowed in Rosh Chodesh Nisan.
And they're testifying that before the father died, he admitted he owed the money.
Right, but now there's a receipt that he paid back. So I agree I owed you the money, but I have a receipt now that I paid back. There is a slight possibility, practical possibility.
There's two different things here.
Why?
One is before and one is after.
Yeah, but again, the receipt saying that what?
Fine. He admitted that he owed the money.
Yeah, but now he has a receipt.
Yeah,
And he
okay.
paid it back.
And he paid it back. So I have a receipt that I paid back.
What that has nothing to do with the witnesses.
Who signed the receipt? Who signed that receipt? Witnesses.
Witnesses.
So you're telling me that the witnesses that signed it are liars?
The same witnesses?
No, witnesses, period. So by you telling me the receipt is a forgery, are you saying the witnesses are lying? Forgery doesn't mean, we're understanding forgery mean that it's you conspired with witnesses. The Torah never says that. The Torah says, Apishnai Meidim Yakum Davar, we believe two witnesses. We're going to see in a second, you're bringing out a point, we're going to be worried about forgery. This is the other point. Let's see it right now. Mazutra, what's the other point is that we're going to say that the forgery is so good that we don't believe that witnesses are lying, we believe that you forged your witnesses' signatures. Mazutra Breder Amari Amar, let's see it inside. Mahanami Hilchasik Rav Chama, Dem Isa the Taver Ma'ayo, Iboyle Lafuka Bechayavun. If it was really true, if it was a true receipt, you would have produced it when the father was alive. Like way Rashi explains, like Mel is saying, is that the forgery is so powerful. This forgery is that we don't think that you conspired with Reuven and Shimon, the witnesses. We think that you forged Reuven and Shimon's signatures so well that you're the next level forger. That's the issue. Therefore, we're gonna paskin like Rav Chama. That's where Rav Chama is coming from, that he's able to hold on to the notes. Okay. Now, Zion of Beis is going to continue with practical halachas. Today we could have these halachas and HOA fees that could pop up. But in those days, there was communal obligations that people had to do their fair share. If you lived in a city, today it's a little more different. We have a concept called property taxes, and it just goes to the politicians and the public schools and everything. But in those days, it was a little more simple. You paid, they needed a wall to protect the property, to protect the boundaries of the city. Everyone chipped in. You needed a gate, you needed a guard. Everything was quite simple how they made their fees. So we're going to discuss forced fees as a communal obligation. Are we all in the Mishnah on Zion Amud Beis?
Yeah.
Chaim, you have the Mishnah Zion Amud Beis.
Yes.
Right, the new mission.
The new Mishnah. So it's the next page about you. Kaifin, Oisai, Livnois, Beishar, Delas, V'chotzer. The halacha is we can compel a citizen that lives in the place. We're going to see how long he's living there. We're going to compel him to pay his dues. What are the dues? We learned that in the scenario when we try to bring a right as a career. There's something called a courtyard in front of the place where they all lived. There was a shar, Beis Shar, and then there was we call it a gatehouse, and then there was a door in order for people not to walk in. It was a security door. So we force him, even though he doesn't want to pay. Rav Shimon Gamliel, no, depends. Not all courtyards, like kol achatzeres ru'uyos leveshar. Where the Gemara is going to talk about which courtyards need it, which courtyards don't. Another halacha similar. We compel a person who doesn't want to pay to build the surrounding wall in order for enemies not to come in. Udlasayim and doors, uvariach and a crossbar for locking the city's gates. Rav Shimon Gamliel, again, the Gemara is going to explain which cities do not require a wall. Now the question becomes, when do I become a citizen? When I register to vote? What makes me? When I put in my new mailing address? What makes me a citizen, right? How long do you need to live there? After 12 months, we consider a person, he's a resident of the city. However, if a person moves in and he bought himself a nice property, because it's very clear that he's planning on becoming a permanent resident. He bought himself a nice house. However, to clarify that if he just bought a starter home and he's very clearly saying he bought this house because he has the money to buy and he's planning on flipping it because he's going to go to a different property in a different city, there's no question about it that he's not considered a permanent resident. The whole point is in a simple scenario. Okay. Now, the Gemara is going to question, you're telling me that a shar, right? The Mishnah says we compel you to build a Beis Shar. So it's quite clear Beis Shar is actually good for the courtyard. The Gemara is going to relate an incident where we see it's not so good.
Is this a wall around the city?
No, we saw the illustration. I forgot to bring it today. It would have been great for today. But we saw that illustration where we saw it was like a courtyard with a bunch of houses, and in front of the courtyard was like an interesting shape.
In other words,
and then there's a door.
The houses are the walls of the
No.
outside?
There's a wall.
I can't figure out why you need a...
Because there's a big entrance space. Oh, the reason why we built the Beis Shar is for privacy.
If it's not a wall all the way around.
No, so let's make it easy. I'll explain to you. I'll explain to you. This is how it looked. Yeah, we had an illustration, but I forgot to bring it. This is the wall. This is the wall. We live in here. There's a wall that's either built there. However, there's a big entrance space. Picture a big ches that we all walked in. Picture like you have in like in certain places like a big pathway, massive, enough that cars could fit in.
Then, Bobby, into the
Let's finish this.
And 6 feet down, what do you have 6 feet down?
There's a bunch of houses. Let's call it the entrance of a bungalow colony. No, because there's let's picture. Let's make in our head the entrance of a bungalow colony. There's multiple little bungalows in the colony. The colony has a big wall to protect the perimeter. A wall, right? I mean, there's a wall. However, there's a big entrance for people to get in. So what do you do with that entrance? They built a very interesting...
You're telling me that there's a wall.
There is a wall, correct. But the wall is all around the perimeter. How else do you get into the property?
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah.
What you need that gate for?
So why do you need a gate?
Well, so none of them can't come.
There we go. But why do I need a Beis Shar? What was the Beis Shar? The Beis Shar was an interesting type of wall that was in a certain shape that blocked the public view from seeing right into the bungalow colony. So that's why you built the Beis Shar. However, we're going to see in a moment that a Beis Shar could be bad because Aniyim can't get in, they can't see. We're going to see now people would knock on the bungalow colony's door, try to ask for tzedakah. We're going to see that in a minute. However, the Mishnah says you build a Beis Shar means it's good for a bungalow colony to have that little wall from protecting from Hezekriya. The Gemara is going to question this from an incident. Remember the Beis Shar Mal Yossi? Is that really true that it's a good thing? However, there was a big Talmid Chacham. There was a big chassid. Vahu chasida davarogel Eliyahu da mishtoi badei. Eliyahu would constantly, Eliyahu Navi would constantly come and visit him. They would learn together. However, Oived Beis Shar, this Talmid Chacham, this chassid built the Beis Shar in front of their bungalow. V'sula mishtoi badei. Suddenly, Eliyahu stopped coming. Eliyahu Navi stopped coming. So he realized that it was a big mistake building the Beis Shar. So Gemara questions this, right? Now our Mishnah says you should. Like Kasha. We're going to give multiple terutzim, the difference in our Mishnah's Beis Shar to the Mishnah where the chassid built it. Ha migavoy. You know where the person built the Beis Shar? He built it in the courtyard. The issue with building in the courtyard is that Aniyim would come and knock and say, tzedakah, please feed us. So when they built the Beis Shar, it was another sound barrier that now they couldn't get through the wall, and there was the gate, and then the Beis Shar. So they couldn't get through the gate, and then there's another sound barrier, which is the Beis Shar, that the people inside couldn't hear the cries of help of the Aniyim. Our Mishnah, however, we're talking about there's no additional barrier, because it's by the gate is that gatehouse. So therefore, there's no barrier. Another answer is they're both outside the loikash. Ha de isladelis. And our Mishnah has a door, so it's not a big deal. Sorry, ha de isladelis. In the case of Eliyahu Navi, there was a door, and they were embarrassed to open up the door. The case of our Mishnah, ha de lesledelis. Our Mishnah has no door, so they walk right in. And I guess the way they walk right in, and then there's a gate in the inside also. There is a door. The loikasha. Tomorrow I'm going to bring the Perush Chai, and it's going to show you it wasn't it was just a lock with a key that's always in there. It's just we call it the nut. Some doors have it that you just flip it like a nut, like a bolt. That's what type of thing. So it's embarrassing that to go open up the lock is much more of a procedure you need to do to walk in, and it's much more embarrassing, especially you don't belong there. So here we're learning that it means that it has a real lock, not like a door that has a bolt. Iba Seima, they both have a lock, but like Kasha, other Pesachas didemikavoy. There, the lock, this door was from the inside. Ha the Pesachas didemibaroy. There the gate was, the lock was the outside, means you couldn't open it. Right? You couldn't call out. Okay, few terutzim. Right? Whether the point of the story is very simple. The case of Eliyahu Navi, let's call it the way it is. The case of Eliyahu Navi that he stopped approaching him is because he did it in a certain way that Aniyim couldn't come and ask for tzedakah. In our Mishnah, we're going to figure out scenarios different ways, whether it's inside, outside, doors, locks. It's not really the point of the Mishnah is that you're able to walk right in. The Mishnah continued and said, we compel a person who's not willing to pay. A Beis Shar on a door. Tanya. Now we're going to go into Rav Shimon Gamliel. Shimon Gamliel leimer loy kol achatzeir ais ruis l'Beis Shar el achatzer smucha l'Reshus Harabim. So it's very crucial to look at the diagram on Art Scroll. In note 26, do we see all the diagram? Do we see how there's multiple chatzeiros? There's 4. They make it 8 houses with 4 chatzeiros. Do you have that diagram? Mel, I think it's on the previous page, on the bottom. Okay, yeah. So Chatzer 1 and Chatzer 2 is right in front of the Reshus Harabim. Chatzer 3 and Chatzer 4 are not near the Reshus Harabim. So Rav Shimon Gamliel wants to say only Chatzer 2 and Chatzer 1 should be compelled to build a wall. Right? Do we see why? Because they're the ones who the Reshus Harabim is getting to see inside. Julie, do you see this? Julie. You want to look at this? Yeah, there's a diagram. You see in the back, there's 2 chatzeros. The gate's in the front. You see the gate is going to be on the bottom of the line. Okay. Tanya b'Shim Gamliel leimer loy kol chatzeros ruis l'Beis Shar l'chatzer smucha l'Reshus Harabim ruis l'Beis Shar v'she'ein smucha l'Reshus Harabim ein ruis l'Beis Shar. So right, like the diagram explained. Frakta Gemara v'Rabbanan. What is the rationale of the Rabbanan? Rabbanan say all 4 courtyards must share the price, the cost. My answer is Zimnin the Dachib Nerishasarab and Ba'ilevasi. There's sometimes that it gets very crowded that even travelers, I guess with the Mavi is to a certain degree is public. People would go into the Mavi also, and therefore they have to pay. Okay. Next scenario. Tanya. A Kaivin Isai live nice, a surrounding wall. Tanya Rabbanan Kaivin Isai last ear, Dosam B'riach. Okay, we're going to skip this parentheses. Now, Marshal takes it up. Shimon Gamliel Leimer. Loi kol hayarais ruis l'chaima le'ira smuch l'sfar rui l'chaima v'sheina smuch l'sfar ain't rui l'chaima. Basically, Shmuel tries to say practical. Let's be practical. Do we understand why the cities of California and the cities like the states like of California and the states of Florida who's suffering the most with the immigrant crisis? Let's make it real, right? This is what's going on, right? Who's suffering the most? Forget about the bringing in the olden days where it wasn't so easy to travel. Today they just airplane them right to New York. But where are the immigrants coming from? They're coming through the southern border, right? So it makes the Zakar Shingaleo. Why should I, who's much deeper, have to pay for invaders that are only going to invade in the south? Rabbanan, what's Rabbanan going to say? What's their rationale? No, Zimnan the Mikr v'asigayas. Something happens, the invaders go very deep in. Therefore, you must partake in the cost. Now, we're going to question the cost itself. How do you evaluate the cost? So let's think about it for a moment. What are we worried about? Invaders? What are invaders coming for? Are they coming to kill you? Or are they coming to take all your money? It's going to make practical implications. We're going to have practical nafkaminas. If they're coming to take your money, a person who doesn't have a lot of money, doesn't make sense that he should pay less for the wall than a person who's very wealthy, because you're the one who's going to lose all the money. However, if they're coming to kill, we're all equal, right? We're all the same nefesh. Another point is that even when you collect it, makes sense that the people at the edge of the city, right? Even in the Holocaust, they always came in. The first people everywhere, even in Eretz Yisrael, what happened with us, the beginning of the border, suffer the most. To get deeper, it takes a little longer, right? So the Gemara is going to question maybe the people the closest to the border, literally like the Moshavim, or maybe the people that are very wealthy if they're coming for money. So let's go through it inside. When they collect the funds, maybe they collect according to the wealth. Since they're coming for the wealth, they're not coming to kill you. Rabbi Lazar, which was his son, Lazar Bani, he told, make sure that everyone works like this. Some people are not going to be happy, especially the wealthy people have the power. And he's basically going against them, right? If we think about it. Who is he going against? The rich people. Okay, another version was, when they collect, maybe the people closest. Right? It makes sense, right? What? No, we're almost done the Amid. They go whoever's the closest to that house, because, right, the closest to the border, because they're going to suffer the most. Rabbi Lazar, my son. Make sure, because again, make sure they don't deviate from that. Okay, we're going to stop over here, and in Yirtzeh Hashem, we're going to continue tomorrow from the bottom of Zion Amud Beis.